Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating puzzle. We're going to uncover why building massive, long-lasting wealth actually doesn't require you to have a supercomputer brain or some genius-level IQ. Instead, it demands something far rarer and honestly, a lot harder to master: elite emotional discipline.
Okay, let's dive into this. It all starts with a huge paradox. If you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's the kind of question that frustrates incredibly brilliant people every single day. And the foundational premise we're exploring here is that when it comes to financial success, your temperament completely trumps your IQ every single time.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at a brilliant little micro story. Back in a 1989 interview, the famous American investor Walter Schloss recalled this specific day when his good buddy Warren Buffett was playing golf at the gorgeous Pebble Beach resort. Buffett was out on the course with his business partner Charlie Munger and their friend Jack Byrne. Just enjoying a pretty standard game.
But then, out of nowhere, one of the guys offered Buffett a truly absurd bet. The terms were wild. If Buffett could score a hole-in-one on a single stroke, he'd win a massive $100,000. But if he took the swing and missed, he only had to pay $10. Now, let's be real. Almost anyone on the planet would eagerly jump at this bet, right? The potential loss of $10 is practically nothing, especially to a billionaire, while the potential upside is just enormous.
So, the crucial point is, Buffett flat out rejected it. No way. When his friends asked him, why wouldn't you risk a measly $10 for a shot at 100 grand, Buffett fired back with an unforgettable rationale. He said, if you aren't disciplined in small things, you won't be in big things. See, Buffett knew the mathematical probability of actually hitting that hole-in-one was basically zero. To him, taking a mathematically terrible bet, even for absolute pocket change, was a direct violation of his unbreakable emotional discipline. He just refused to throw money away, proving his mindset is totally bulletproof.
Now that anecdote is super powerful, but this isn't just about billionaires on golf courses relying on their gut instincts. There is hard science backing this up. In January 2011, psychologist Terry Moffat published what became one of the most famous and comprehensive child psychology studies of the modern era. You might have heard of it. It's famously known as the Dunedin study.
The sheer scope of this research was absolutely massive. Researchers started by tracking over 1,000 children born in New Zealand in 1972 and 73. Starting in 75, when the kids were literally toddlers, the researchers began rigorously testing them. They monitored these individuals across 11 distinct life stages, carefully measuring behavioral factors like hyperactivity, impulsivity, and aggression, all the way until the subjects hit 32 years old. They tracked them for 3 decades.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the study's ultimate conclusion. Imagine child A and child B. They have the exact same high IQ. They come from the exact same social class and have super similar family circumstances. The only real difference? Child B consistently demonstrated high self-control in their early years. Well, the study proved that the kid with high self-control grew up to be far richer, physically healthier, and way less likely to have a criminal record or end up in financial distress. The ability to control impulses was the absolute ultimate predictor of a good life, totally independent of just raw, sheer intelligence.
So, how exactly does this lack of self-control show up in our adult lives, especially when we're trying to build wealth? Well, think about it. The financial market is essentially an infinite psychological test. Your money is constantly triggering these deep, raw human emotions. It tests your greed, your hope, your panic, and your anger, pretty much on a daily basis.
And this brings us to a huge psychological hurdle: action bias. It's this overwhelming, burning urge to just do something, literally anything to relieve stress during highly uncertain times, even if doing absolutely nothing is the mathematically correct move. Take a look back at the U.S. presidential election on November 8, 2016. The completely unexpected result sent a massive shockwave around the globe. It acted as an immense macro event that triggered intense emotional panic. Investors were absolutely terrified and felt this overwhelming action bias to just sell all their stocks and run straight to cash.
During that chaotic window, financial advisor Rebecca Kennedy was fielding calls from terrified clients who were practically begging to liquidate their assets. But she famously urged them to hold steady, reminding them that long-term portfolios easily outlast any single political administration. And well, history proved her right. In that first year alone, the Dow Jones skyrocketed 31% and the S&P 500 jumped 23%. Those who surrendered to action bias, who sold out of pure panic, They completely missed out on these massive historic wealth-building gains.
It turns out doing nothing is incredibly hard, but it's also incredibly profitable. In Edwin Lefebvre's legendary 1923 book referencing the iconic trader Jesse Livermore, we get this incredible piece of wisdom. Money is made by sitting tight, not by thinking. It perfectly captures the reality that the biggest winner in the market is very often the investor who simply puts their hands in their pockets, ignores all the noise, and does absolutely nothing.
But wait, why is sitting tight so impossibly hard for so many smart people? Behavioral finance actually explains this through the theory of regret. This theory tells us that investors will actively abandon their own solid, well-researched analysis just to follow the herd. Why? Because losing with the crowd hurts emotionally far less than losing alone. The fear of missing out, FOMO, is so potent that brilliant people will literally run with the pack straight off a cliff just to feel the psychological comfort of being part of the group.
Let's move to and see how this builds. This collective fear of missing out brings us to one of the most tragic, just spectacular financial blunders in modern history. This is the incredible story of Stanley Druckenmiller, right during the peak of the dot-com bubble back in the year 2000.
Now, Druckenmiller was an absolute genius, responsible for managing George Soros's massive quantum fund. Let's trace how this actually played out. Step 1. His brilliant intellect correctly identified that the tech sector was in a massive, totally irrational bubble. Step 2. He completely exited the market, cashing out with huge profits. Perfect, right? But then step 3 hits. As the weeks went on, he watched other investors continue to make insane, completely irrational daily returns. The psychological torture and FOMO just became unbearable. He was emotionally exhausted. Finally, step 4, completely overriding his own genius analysis, he caved to his emotions and aggressively re-entered the market, buying $6 billion worth of tech stocks right at the absolute top.
And wow, here is the staggering penalty for losing that emotional discipline. Exactly 1 hour. Literally 1 hour after he re-entered the market with those billions, the dot-com bubble burst. The market aggressively crashed. Because he lacked the temperament to just sit tight, Druckenmiller lost $3 billion in just 6 weeks. $3 billion! When asked about it years later, he admitted he knew it was the wrong move intellectually from the very start, but he simply couldn't control himself emotionally.
This profound truth brings all our threads together, right back to where we started with Warren Buffett. At the 2004 Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, this young investor named Oliver, who had traveled all the way from Vienna, stood up with the microphone. He told Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger he had read 40 books on investing and wanted to know their absolute secret to achieving the spectacular success they'd enjoyed.
And this brilliantly illustrates our main point today. Buffett's answer perfectly captures the core lesson of our entire analysis. He looked at the young man and told him, "Temperament is more important than IQ." Buffett explained that you do not need a supercomputer brain to build massive wealth. What you actually need is an exceptional, ironclad ability to control your emotions. If you can't control your temperament, your impulses, and your urge to follow the herd, honestly, no amount of sheer intelligence is going to save you from disaster.
So I want to leave you with this lingering, kind of provocative question to evaluate for yourself. What is your temperament costing you? Are you making rational long-term decisions, or are you letting panic, FOMO, and action bias steer your financial ship? Take a really hard look at your own financial discipline. I'd love for you to share your own stock market experiences, the wins, the painful emotional losses, and the lessons you've learned right down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, true wealth always begins with mastering yourself.